I'm Mikey Robbins and I'm here at the National Museum of Australia to check out their project, Defining Moments in Australian History. Look, what we're going to do is we're going to go behind the scenes. We're going to check out some objects that tell the stories about these moments, about who we are. Stick around, it's going to be fun. This defining moment sees us back inside the museum. It's a beautiful day outside, there are kids everywhere, so if you hear some noise, it's just the sound of joyful children learning. I'm with Sophie Jensen from the museum. Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Mikey.
Now, this object we're about to talk about, or these objects, should I say, are very unusual. I'd not heard of them up until recently. What are they?
These objects, Mikey, are called Convict love tokens.
Yeah?
But they also have been called leaden hearts, and in a way that kind of sums up what they are.
Leaden hearts.
Leaden hearts. These leaden hearts were tokens that were made by convicts before their transportation to Australia. So after they were sentenced, before they were transported, they would make these tokens to give and leave with the people that they loved, left behind them in England. So they're very moving objects, they're very personal objects. What they're actually made from quite often is coins.
Yep, you've got one here.
I've got one here. This is the most common kind of a coin that the tokens were made of, and it's a 1797 cartwheel penny.
It's surprisingly heavy.
It's heavy, but it was cheap.
Right.
And the other thing about it is it's a very easy coin to smooth down.
Right.
And then to put in your own message.
So let's imagine, say, I'm about to be transported. You're my beloved sister, Sophie. How do I get this to you?
There are a lot of different ways that convicts would have been able to kind of get these to their friends and loved ones, and of course they're quite often confined for long periods after sentencing but before transportation.
Right.
And they're put to work during that time. They're often on the hulks, they're confined. So these tokens sometimes actually even reflect mistakes in sentences. Some people who are sentenced to death and they've written on their tokens cast for death actually end up then being transported.
Wow.
There are stories within each token, and I think that's where the real power of these tokens is that they're individual, they're unique, and they're very, very emotional objects.
This is the largest collection of these tokens in the world.
That's right.
So I'm assuming we got these from England?
We did.
Yeah.
So the National Museum actually has 314 of these in our collection. Some of them actually date from pre-transportation to Australia. Some of these people would have been transported to the American colonies.
Oh, right.
But we have them then right through the period of Australian transportation. People haven't heard of them, perhaps partly because they weren't so many in Australia. We bought them from a collector in Britain. We bought one collection of 307. He had quite a thing for them, and we were very lucky in that we were able to purchase them to bring them in.
Transportation was the start of modern Australian history.
Yeah, look, and I think it's one of those things we can hear all the kids here learning today. Convict history is one of those things that everyone thinks of immediately when they think of Australian history, and it is one of those things that does help to define the start of European kind of colonisation of this kind of continent. But I think the particular thing about these tokens is we all know our dates and figures about convict history. We know, 1788. It ended remarkably late, of course. 1868, the last convict ship comes into Western Australia. It had ended earlier in other states in the 50s.
As the gold rush developed, the need for convicts diminished.
That's right.
You talk about what we learnt at school. We have these images in our head of convicts being whipped. We know life was harsh and cruel. But is that a stereotype?
Look, there are some stereotypes about convicts that are certainly true, and there are others that we are kind of interested in looking at more closely. Obviously, one of the big stereotypes is about women convicts and prostitution. Prostitution wasn't even actually a transportable offence. What these objects actually allow us to do is debunk a lot of those kind of things and actually talk about personal stories. Convicts' lives are incredibly well documented, but what we don't have, what we kind of miss, is the fact that every one of those records relates to an individual, to a person that came to this country at a particular point and actually then went through a life as a convict. But these particular tokens speak to their life before that, and they speak to the people that lives were shattered through this experience. They weren't emailing home. They weren't able to kind of catch up on Facebook. There was no connection. These people were being lost.
Sent to the other side of the world.
Exactly. And lives, families, everything shattered, ruined, gone. And these tokens capture that moment in these people's lives.
Just so much history in one small object.
That's right. They're very powerful.
Thanks for watching, but it doesn't end here. We want you to join the conversation. go to the National Museum of Australia's website, that's nma.gov.au, and let us know what you think are the defining moments in Australian history. We'd love to hear your opinion. Once again, thanks for watching. See you soon.